Welcome back to the Blocks Retro Repair YouTube channel. Today we're working again on this 1955 Studebaker Commander. Previously, we got the engine to pop off after unseizing it. Now it's time to see if we can get it to actually run. I did see that somebody pulled off the fuel line. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be actually pumping. That diaphragm's probably bad, or we're just not cranking over fast enough. One of the two. But I squirted some gas down the carb, well, down that inlet to fill up the float, so hopefully we have enough gas to possibly pop off using the actual carburetor and maybe run for more than a quarter of a second. My method for refilling this carb could be improved by a lot. This could be improved a lot. God damn it, I wasn't filming the second it actually popped off, but let me see if I can get it to pop off again. As you can see, there's a lot of smoke for a few reasons. One, we gotta burn out all that transmission fluid and all that fun stuff that's probably wetting the cylinders. And also, the exhausts are broken off right at the headers. So, you know, we don't really have an exhaust system. Well, it runs, but not well. We definitely have some issues. What I want to do is throw a compression checker on these cylinders and see if we've gained any cylinders back. I don't think I mentioned it before, but previously when we broke this thing free, we had nearly no compression between these two middle cylinders, which makes me think we might have blown the head gasket between those two, or something much worse, and the piston rings or valves are bad on both those cylinders. All the others had, I believe, a little bit of compression, but those two I know were very, very low. As per the instructions, I've removed all its spark plugs. We've got the throttle open, the choke open. Let's see if we have any compression on cylinder number 1 here. We're going to try it with just the 6 volts, just jumping to the other side of the solenoid, and seeing if we get, well, any compression. You know what? That's damn good. Okay, that is awesome, actually. A little over 120 on cylinder number 1. That's perfect. Now this cylinder I was very, very concerned about because, well, still I'm very concerned about. It didn't seem to have much of any compression back when I first broke the motor free, so I have my doubts on whether we're going to get anything we want to see here. That's what I didn't want to see. Looks like we're sitting at about 70 psi. What we could have is a little bit of the rings not seating properly right now, needs to break them free, or a valve, you know, maybe one of the valves was open on this motor when it was sitting, and a little bit of rust got in that valve seat. Now, this third cylinder here on this driver's side is the one I was absolutely most concerned about, so let's see what we got. Actually, looks like we're about the same. I don't know if that's good, but I guess it's better than 0 again, so I guess we'll take it. Okay, last on the driver's side, 90. That's not great. I was hoping for more, but better than 70, I guess. Rear passenger, we're looking at 120. Now we'll try up one more up from the back and see what it's at. Okay, we're going down. That's not the direction I want to see. We're looking at about 100 on this cylinder. Well, consistency is key, right? About 100 again on that cylinder. And just under 120 for this front one. So it looks like our weak cylinders are the middle two, and the middle two, and that one. So we have 3 good, 3 meh, and 2 Now what I want to do is pull off that fuel pump, see if we can get it to function, see if it's just a simple, it is functional, I just didn't try it long enough, or if we have a broken diaphragm and I need to replace it. Let's pull it off. I think it's basically like 2 bolts, so it should be pretty simple. Here is the fuel pump. It smells very varnishy, so that's very fun. Let's pop this thing apart and see if we just have sludge on the inside or a broken membrane or whatever it is. Well, I mean, that's not great, but I mean, it's honestly not too bad. None of the things are actually broken inside here. None of the rubbers seem bad, so let's put this back together and see if we can actually get it to function. Unexpectedly, the thing that's keeping the fuel pump from working is the hose going to the fuel pump. This thing is clogged. Okay, that was unexpected. There we go. That thing is running absolutely amazing now. I can pump it. It pumps a ton of fuel. So let's slap this thing back on the motor and see if we can get this thing to run, well, by its own fuel pump. Well, I pulled out the old radiator thinking, oh, it probably has a hole, but we'll be able to just solder it. However, what I wasn't expecting was for basically the entire bottom half of the radiator to be rotted through. I tried soldering a few spots, but the metal's just gone. So, unfortunately, it's not really repairing this radiator without a ton of work, and that's really not worth it. And by a ton of work, I mean desoldering the tops, either replacing the tubes or just blocking off the tubes. And honestly, I don't have the equipment for that. For now, I would like to actually have something in this engine to actually cool it while it's, while I'm riding it around, testing everything, and also while I'm doing the body work. Eventually, we'll get a brand new radiator. So I was doing some radiator shopping. I found this one from an '05 Durango. Fits width-wise, but vertically is way too high. I got this one out of an old Ford 801, I believe, but it supposedly has a hole. I couldn't find the hole when I was just pressure testing with water. This is so far our best bet. It won't cool it very well as it's way too small, but it's better than nothing. Look back at the YouTube video where I got these 4 cars and realized in those spare parts, I managed to get a new radiator. Well, not new, but relatively good condition compared to the one that was in this. So, went and found that in where I put all these parts, and sure enough, it seems to hold water. It doesn't have any holes, even has a bottom radiator hose. It just had a giant mouse nest in the top half that I had to wash out, but this is definitely going to be our best bet. I'm not actually going to put that radiator in yet, because first we're going to probably put the belts and all that fun stuff back on this thing, and then we're going to roll this car out of the garage and rinse it out, because, well, judging by all of the gunk that was in the old radiator, there's a lot of stuff in this engine block that will immediately clog up our radiator. So I'm going to rinse this out as best I can, and then we'll hook up the new radiator and all that fun stuff. Now, I went ahead and removed the old master cylinder. Originally, in the other video, I said it was cable-driven. It's not cable-driven. There's a mechanical linkage under the pedal that reaches down and pushes this. I was wrong about that, but I originally was thinking I could probably just rebuild this thing. I was wrong about that. I'm not entirely sure what the hell happened here, but yeah, that's not being repaired. These things aren't expensive, so I got a new one already, so we're going to get that installed, though I'm treating the metal where this mounts so we don't have any rust issues in the future, just in case we somehow get rust. I've cleaned it up, and we're going to put some rust dissolver to remove the current surface rust, and get all that painted up so we don't have any issues. As you can see, I also had to cut the lines, so we're going to have to make new brake lines, but I figured I'd have to do that anyway. Now, eventually, the whole, car is going to get rust preventative, but for now, since we're mounting this thing right here, I figured we might as well do some rust preventative right where this thing is mounted. It is now brake line time, as I have to replace the 2 brake lines I ended up having to cut to take off that master cylinder, as it was at a very sharp angle, and I couldn't get a proper, well, actually, I could get a proper flare wrench on it, it just was still stuck. And as you can see, I did manage to get the other side free, but it twisted this up. But we're making new brake lines for it. Got this, I forget exactly what this stuff is, but it's not steel because steel rusts, and steel's harder to flare. Also got a Harbor Freight flaring kit, and, well, let's, get brake lining. I already went ahead and got this short one made, as you can see, pretty good flares, so let's make the long one, and we should be ready to install that master cylinder and all that fun stuff. And there's our new master cylinder installed. I did bench bleed it, don't worry. Also got our new brake lines installed, so now we go to all the wheels and bleed this thing and see if we can, well, I already bled the master cylinder, but bleed all the lines out, because I had to replace 2 of them, and, well, all the others were empty, most likely, because one weird thing about this car, since the master cylinder appears to be like the lowest part of the car, since it rusted out, we lost all of the brake fluid in everything. That's concerning, to, well, say the least. And actually, from right here, you can see the mechanical linkage. As you can see, right there's the pedal. I connected to that, which pivots directly into that. I ended up going to the rear here to figure out how to bleed these brakes yesterday, and realized the brake line from right here to right there was completely gone from here to there. So we got all new brake lines here in the rear. I also realized there was a hole in the one going up to the front, so all new brake lines here in the rear. I then went to bleed the brakes, and the little 6-inch one from right here to this driver's side tire exploded on me, so then I said to screw it, and replaced every single steel brake line that was left on this car. I figured I'd eventually do it. I just figured I'd do it whenever I went to restore the body on this thing. I'd go ahead and replace all those lines when I'm working on the frame and all that fun stuff, but clearly I had to replace them all right now. By the way, 25 foot of brake line will do this entire car, and you'll have roughly 2 feet left over. I also went ahead and fixed our throttle linkage. As I showed in a previous video, it was broken down there, and somebody had just wired it together with some, honestly, it looked like electric fence wire. Now, I figured this would be super easy. Unbolt this little thing, take it out, weld it, grind it, drill it, and we'd be good to go. The issue is, this is held on by a head bolt. And while it probably would have been fine, I wasn't going to risk it removing a head bolt. One, it could cause a leak in the head gasket by removing it and then putting it back in. Or worse, if it breaks off, well, we're pulling ahead to remove that bolt. So, for now, I just went ahead and welded it upside down and ground it down and then drilled it while laying on my back, which was real fun. But it's now connected and our gas pedal now functions. Also replaced our battery wires with some nice 00 wire, and now we can actually turn this thing over and start it from the key, which is absolutely incredible. Now again, I'm still not leaving this battery connected because I do not trust this 60-year-old wiring, but wait. I'm not doing math right. Older than 60-year-old electric wiring. That's like 70 years old. And also, there's a lot of random cut wires that we'll have to fix at some point. But for now, we can still start it and stop it, I guess, from the key. Now what we need is to make this thing roll. This tire holds a little bit of air, and so does the rear passenger, but the rear driver and the front passenger are, well, very much flat, and you can stick your hand inside of them. So I'm going to trade those out on one of the other Studebakers for some that hold enough air to be round-ish, so we can at least roll this thing out. Obviously, we're not driving anywhere on these, but I just need tires that'll make it so I can roll this thing around and roll it out of the garage. Then we're going to roll this thing out, we're going to wash out the engine block and get all of the gunk out of that cooling system that we can, and then I guess we'll put the radiator back in, fill it up with some coolant. Probably have to flush that out immediately after it runs for a little bit, but hopefully get this thing to be able to drive in and out. Unfortunately, no brakes for us. The cylinder in this one is broken. I bled out the rear passenger and that worked. Went to bleed out that one and that wasn't bleeding out. Went to bleed out the other side, that wasn't working. And then I looked over here and realized this one was just dumping the fluid out. So we're gonna have to replace that and honestly, probably replace all four. So for now, we're working on getting this parking brake freed up, and then we can at least have some form of brakes. Though, not a good one.
And here's where I was getting somewhat concerned. It was not moving, no matter what gear I was in. So I popped the cover off of the transmission fluid cap, pulled off the transmission fluid cap, and realized it didn't have any transmission fluid. So, after a bunch of transmission fluid was added, it now somewhat moves.
Unfortunately, as it turns out, that is a different radiator. I figured they'd be the same. They're not. The outlet hose and the drain plug are in a different spot. So unfortunately, it doesn't actually fit, so I can't actually bolt it in. So I guess we're going to see if I can get the old one rebuilt, or if I just need to go buy a new radiator. So that, unfortunately, did not work. But I did flush out the system and put in some coolant, so it won't freeze, and also so it shouldn't overheat. Now, unfortunately, pulling it back in the garage did not go so well. This spring here is important. I forgot about that spring. I had removed this so I could flush out the system. And, yeah, this is very much necessary, because without this, you get the gas stays. I discovered that when, well, I went to pull it in the garage, and, I need a new shop vac now. Shout out to steel bumpers and zero crumple zones. This took literally no damage, but yeah, that's a new shop vac. And there we have it. It now runs and drives a little too well, though I guess now we need to make it stop. I mean, technically, brakes weren't the reason it had issues. The reason it had issues was because I forgot to hook up that throttle return spring. It would have been fine. The emergency brake worked for pulling it out just fine, and it would have worked fine for pulling it back in. Had the throttle not get stuck because that wasn't hooked up. Though, I guess if I had brakes, that wouldn't have happened because the brakes would have overpowered the engine, but oh well. I guess we'll have to get some brakes on this thing. It runs, it starts from the key, all that's... Again, we're going to have to go over all this wiring. This wiring, probably the majority of it's going to need replaced. There's a lot of random cut wires in a lot of random places. Headlights don't work. None of the turn signals work. Brake lights don't work. I don't know why. Probably because there's a lot of wires that are cut. So, we're going to fix all that, but it now runs and moves. So, we made some progress. See you in the next video. Hopefully, we'll get some more work done to this, or maybe an arcade machine.